Today, we're going to talk about 4 types of scenes that every writer should get damn good at writing. If you can pull these off, then you are well on your way to literary greatness and a bountiful harvest of prosaic profundity. These are scenes that are either so critical to the story that you need to get them right, or they're scenes that present unique difficulties that require a great deal of skill to surmount. Master these scenes and you've mastered life. Well, at least the writing parts of life. I can't help you with the other things. Let's begin by talking about the fight scene. Fight scenes, or really any scene where you have 2 or more characters physically engaged with each other, which means that the definition of this scene extends to another type of scene where 2 characters aren't fighting, but it kind of looks like they're fighting. Like if you were explaining it to an alien, you would have to go into a lot of detail about why what the characters are doing is not actually, but I digress. Anyway, these types of scenes are tough because you have to convey a lot of information in a very short amount of time. Even if they go on for a few pages, fight scenes are usually very fast paced. But they also require you to get a lot of detail across to the reader, which means that every single line of a fight scene must be carefully thought out. Fight scenes are also very complex, especially if you have more than 2 characters duking it out. This creates a lot of complexity, there's lots of stuff going on, and it's easy for the reader to lose a visual picture of what's happening. They can sometimes have difficulty following the action. If you can pull a reader through a complex fight scene with enough clarity that they understand what's happening, they understand where the characters are and how they're moving and what they're doing, that's a sign that you've mastered this type of scene. Make sure that any fight scene your characters engage in has a clear goal. Like there should be something that they very clearly get if they win that fight. There should be some kind of reward for winning. Make sure that it's clear at all times that someone is winning or losing the fight. That's another good strategy for these types of scenes, having a shifting balance of power as the scene progresses. Those are some things that help with writing fight scenes. Next type of scene that it would behoove writers to master, the realization or epiphany or change of heart scene. This is a scene where you have a character make a significant change in their strategy or their approach or their mindset solely based on introspection that the character is doing. There's nothing external happening. They're not having a conversation with another character. They come to this change just by thinking about it. You'll see a common piece of advice to avoid character introspection or navel gazing as much as possible. There's nothing inherently wrong with character introspection. It's just that a lot of writers, a lot of new writers especially, spend way too much time. They have way too many scenes where characters are just sitting there ruminating about their situation. Action and dialogue do a lot more to move the plot forward, and those things are often more interesting than rumination, so it makes sense to encourage writers to focus on action or dialogue instead of character rumination. All that being said, sometimes a character does need to have a change of heart or realize something really important, and this gets accomplished solely through their own rumination. These scenes are tough to write because, well, first off, rumination is just tough to write in general, but also because showing change, moving a reader through changes in the character's mind just through the thoughts that the character is having can be tricky. You really need to have a lot of depth to the character for this to work. You can't move too quickly to the realization, or it will feel like the character is changing too quickly. But you also don't want to linger on these scenes for too long because a lot of rumination can get kind of draggy. Making characters' thoughts feel like they have a plot, that there are changes happening, that there's a back and forth between different ideas can be a tough thing to do. Writers aren't necessarily told to avoid rumination because it's inherently bad. Mostly they're told to avoid it just because it's kind of hard to write. If you have an important plot point or a movement in a character arc that needs to be conveyed just by the character noodling it over, that's tricky. If you've pulled it off, though, then you've mastered the introspection scene. Next type of scene that every writer should master, the climax or resolution. This is an obvious one on the list because the climax is a very important scene in any story, but the true reason that having a good climax is tough is not what you think it is. Yes, I just said that sentence. The whole point of a story really is to get to the resolution of the conflict. That's why the reader is there reading it. This is the climactic finale to your story where everything comes together. The heroes win, usually the villains lose and probably fall into a vat of acid or something. Everybody hugs, everybody grows, and then we start preparing for the inevitable sequel. A lot of attention gets put on that moment, on the scene where things get resolved. But writing a good climax has almost nothing to do with the scene itself and everything to do with anything that leads up to that scene. All the groundwork leading up to the resolution is what's truly important. If you want your story to have a good climax, you have to prepare for it. You can't just focus on that scene itself. You have to lay the proper groundwork ahead of time. Yes, I also just said that. I'm not even going to get into the fact that if your story has more than one arc, it's probably going to have multiple... But you know what? I'm not even going to say that. A bad ending or a bad resolution to a story is really only bad if it's paired with the wrong beginning. The resolution of your story is powered by what you set up earlier on. That's why writing a good climax is tricky. It has nothing to do with the actual scene. Well, it does, but it has as much to do with all the other scenes leading up to it. A good ending means writing a good middle and a good beginning. A good climax is tough to write because you have to write a good rest of the story in order for it to really land. And the last type of scene that every writer should master, the opening. I have no idea why we're talking about this last. If the reader puts the book down because the opening is kind of meh, then nothing else really matters, does it? The opening is so important because it's the time where you draw an unfamiliar reader into the world of your narrative. Doing this poorly means they won't care, they won't get engaged, they won't keep reading. This is complicated because you need to get them up to speed on your characters and your conflict and your plot and your world and everything else, and also present something that's interesting enough to be engaging, something that will hook them and make them want to continue reading. You have to do all this without being so complex that it becomes hard to follow, it becomes hard to get into the story. You don't want to overwhelm the reader. Reveal too much information and the intro can become info-dumpy. Reveal not enough information and the reader will be confused and disinterested. A lackluster middle and ending won't be saved by a good intro. A lot of books start strong and then peter out. You don't want that, but you also need to recognize that a bad opening will sink even a great middle or a great ending. Speaking of great endings, this one is just going to be kind of okay. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you're wondering why there's bread here, well, that's because writing good scenes is the bread and butter. I didn't bring any butter, damn it. Anyway, if you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel for more content. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.